Good morning everyone, it's Pierre speaking. It's the 19th of April 2016. Time is about 7:45 when I made this video clip. Starting off with the Euro Index daily chart. Why the daily chart? The 4-hour tells us to short, the daily tells us to long. While we're above this 200 EMA at 98.49, my buyers will be to look for longs. So if we honor it, we flip the daily chart from the bottom to the high we made, then we've got a zone starting at 99.06 coming down to 98.14. That will be the potential earth and sky trading zone. Saying that, if we add a 58.2 FIP, then that comes in at 99.49. That holds hands with the 55 EMA, daily 55 EMA, the monthly main pivot point, and if we look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance. Stochastic is getting into an oversold area, so I'll be keeping an eye on this level for possible long setups. If we do break that for some reason to the downside, my next line in the sands will be 98.57, where I will look for solid support and then to look for that long. Possible counter trades 100.90, which is the high we made, and then the monthly pivot point at 101.60 for potential counter trades. Profit take for counter trades, look at 99.72. Euro US dollar daily chart. The 4 hours mix, the daily tells us to long. Last week we closed 111 pips lower than the opening price. Remember I showed you that MACD divergence. Price followed that MACD divergence so that we had that pullback. So if we honor it and we stick to the daily chart, we flip from the bottom to the high we made, then we've got a zone starting at 11.43 coming down to 09.83. That will be the potential earth and sky trading zone for the week. In the zone we've got a 200 EMA at 11.21. Like the Euro Index, if we add the 58.2 FIP, then that comes in at 12.19. That holds hands with a 55 EMA and a monthly main pivot point. If we look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance as well. So I will be looking for good solid support at 12.05 before considering taking longs. Possible counter trades 14.63 and 15.87, where we have last month's high or the high area we made, and then the monthly resistance 1 pivot. Possible profit takes areas at the 55 EMA at 13.19. Euro JPY, one of the pairs that opened with a gap, the gap closed, and what did price do? We are busy going up, hanging around the 55 EMA. If we look at the direction in the 4 hour tells us to short, daily tells us to short. We close 138 pips lower than the opening price. So if we honor it, we flip from the high to the low, then we've got a zone 122.84 going up to 123.43. Price shot past the potential trading zone, but I will keep an eye on 123.60 for possible turnaround. So drop down to the smaller time frames, look for that MACD divergence on the 60 minutes and then confirmation on the 30-minute chart to take those shorts. If we do break this to the upside, next line in the sand 124.01, as that was last week's high area. If we look at the Euro Pound daily chart, the 4 hours mix, the daily tells us to long. We close 100 pips lower than the opening. So if we stick to the daily chart, we flip from the bottom to the top, then we've got a zone starting at 7.883 coming down to 7.766. Currently price is camping out at 7.907, which is the 4 hour 200 EMA. And if we look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance in that same area. Just a little bit lower down, we've got the 50% FIP at 7.883 and then the 55 at 7.861. That will be my line in the sand. The 55 EMA and this monthly main pivot point for solid support areas. But as I said, keep our eye on 7.907 as well. Pound US dollar is just driving me nutters. I don't like it when price whips over the 200 EMA, and that is the 4 hour 200 EMA, the pink line here, and you can see over the last 2 months we are just ignoring that 200 EMA. I showed you last week that triangle, the triangle broke out to the downside, we had a pullback and an awesome M2 short setup. This week again it looks once again if we trap in a triangle, so be careful with the pound US dollar. The pound JPY daily chart, the 4 hour tells us to short, the daily tells us to short. We closed 27 pips higher than the opening price. If we quickly drop to the 4-hour chart, then we're already higher than last week's high area, and that's why I want to flip the daily chart. If we go back to the daily chart and we flip previous month from the high to the low, then we've got a zone starting at 157.89 going up to 161.02. That will be the Earth and Sky trading zone. In the zone we've got the 200 EMA, which is the 4-hour, and the daily 55 coming down. Saying that now, all guys, if we add a 38.2 FIP here, 156.42 can be a key resistance level. If we look to the left of the chart, it was previous support resistance, and this pivot point at 157.20 is a monthly pivot point. Remember, once support breaks, that will turn into resistance. So keep your eye on 156.42 and 157.20 for possible roadblock for those shorts. Possible counter trades, I will only look if we get to 152.77 and 151.65. Look at the Aussie US dollar 4-hour chart. I'm flipping the 4-hour chart. The 4-hour tells us the long, daily tells us the long. We close 79 pips higher than the opening price. Here's another pair that opened with the gap, and that gap closed already. If we flip from the bottom to the high we made, then we've got a zone starting at 7.667 coming down to 7.599. If price do make new highs, follow it with your flip so that the potential trading zone can move. In the trading zone we've got the 55 EMA, the weekly main pivot point, where I will be keeping our eye on for support to go long. Possible counter trades, psychological level of 7,800 and 7,843. For first profit take area 7,743, and then the 55 EMA at 7,667. If you look at the Aussie JPY 4-hour chart, then look at this gap. Another pair that opened with a gap, the gap filled, and this pair already pulled back 184 pips. If we drop to the daily, I'm not going to flip this, guys, then I will be keeping our eye on this 200 EMA at 85.70 and last month's high area, which was about at 86.49 for possible roadblock to short again. This is another pair that's ignoring the 4-hour 200 EMA and the 55 EMA, so be careful with this as well. US dollar JPY daily chart. Just let's quickly drop to the 4-hour first. Another pair with a gap, the gap get closed. If we trade Earth and Sky trading system, 4-hour tells us the short, daily tells us the short. Drop to the 4-hour. I didn't want to flip the 4-hour, guys, it wasn't too clear for me, so what I wanted to do is to drop to the daily. I want a bigger pullback because we had a big drop over the last month already. So I flipped the daily from the high to the low to get the zone starting at 11111 going up to 11283. In the trading zone we've got a 200 EMA, the 55 EMA is moving down, and the monthly main pivot point. If we look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance in that area too. Now currently price is having a problem at 109.19, which is the 4-hour 55 EMA. If we drop down to the 4-hour chart, then we can see also it's holding hands with 109.28, which is the weekly pivot point. So there's a possible short coming up here, so keep that in mind, although I would prefer bigger pullbacks to this level 110.59 and the 200 at 11.11.19. Just for interest sake, keep an eye on the 4-hour chart as well, as 109.28 can give a roadblock for possible shorts back to 108.47. US dollar CAT. Drop to the 1 hour quickly here for you. Another pair that opened with a gap, the gap got filled, and this pair already dropped 222 pips. If we go back to the 4-hour chart and we make it bigger, last week we closed minus 6 pips lower in the opening. 4-hour tells us the short, daily tells us the short, so if we stick to that, we flip from the high of last week to the low, then we've got a zone 2878 going up to 2947. If price do make new lows here, follow it with your flip so that the potential trading zone can move. As we see it now, if price don't make new lows and we do get a pullback, I will keep my eyes on 2903, 2912, and if we look to the next previous week there, guys, then that was support resistance in that area too. So that will be my areas to take a short. Possible counter trades 2740 and 2640, going back up to the monthly not the monthly, the weekly main pivot point at 2912 and 2878, where we have that 50% FIP area. US dollar index, yeah, 4 hour tells us to short, daily tells us to short. We close 52 pips higher than opening. So if we drop to the 4 hour chart, we can see let me just make that bigger. We opened, that was last week, so we closed much higher than the opening. So price was trending up, but the direction is still short, so I can't FIP this 4 hour. I need to go to the daily. So if I honor that, we FIP from the high to the low, then we've got a zone starting at 9606 going up to 9750. In the zone, we've got a 200 EMA just underneath that, the monthly main pivot point, and the 55 EMA. If we look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance as well. Now, if we add a 38.2 FIP here, 95.48 holds hands with this 200 EMA, which is the 4 hour EMA. So keep your eye on that level as well. So anything from 95.58 going as high as 96.53 in that area, I will look for short setups. Wait for price to come to you, drop to the smaller time frames, look for MACD divergence, and then the 1226 EMA cross on the 30-minute chart. Possible counter trades 93.59, which was the low we made, and this monthly support one pivot point at 93.06. Possible profit takes, if you do get a counter trade, will be this roadblock here, 94.57, which is the 4 hour 55 EMA. If that breaks, next line in the sand, 95.58. That's me for the week, guys. If you have any questions, please pop in at the forum. We will be able to help you there. Have a good one. Cheers.